must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Today in Africa, we see a lot of uprisings, planning for uprisings, plotting for uprisings in several African countries. The events on the African continent, therefore, as predicted much earlier myself, in 2017, I said, before 2020, 13 African countries would have undergone either soft regime change, soft coups, or violent regime change through uprising, which now seem to be real. The signs that and symbols that we see are the real symbols and the signs that more is to come against African governments. What do we do then? There is a new method of changing governments strategically placed in the United States of America by George Soros. George Soros funds civil societies, civil disobedience, civil violence in Africa. It is upon you Africans and African heads of state, wherever you are, as you plan to convene next month or before the end of this month in Addis Ababa, to understand the magnitude of this regime change strategy. Many wars are taking place, internal strife conflicts like the one in Cameroon, Amazonia, like the one in Biafra, Boko Haram, and then in Biafra, like the one in Libya. But the theme is the same. Regime change, uprising. Is it a matter of taking over our resources? You see, the war in Congo has erupted again. Unknown militias have arrived in Congo, restarted the war, and it is going on. All these culminate to one thing. Are we ready to be independent? As I said last week, this week, are people in Africa ready to accept the results of elections? Elections everywhere in Africa are bringing the chaos we see. The people of Africa seem to be divided after elections or before elections. Is Africa ready for elections? Do we need elections in Africa? If so, are we tolerant enough to accept the results? Are we ready? Which method can we use in Africa to make sure that there is hope for the countries and there is hope and the future of Africa is guaranteed? Viewers, the High Court in Malawi today or yesterday was hearing a case when the president had already been sworn in. If the president of Malawi has been sworn in, then the High Court is hearing the case. Is that not a disaster, an accident in waiting? Whether this will make us have a peaceful Africa remains to be seen. And may God help us to build a better Africa. Thank you very much.
Wewe kama unataka kuingiana na mambo ya ufisadi, yeah? Tutapigana na wewe. You can be my brother, you can be my sister, you can be my closest political ally, you can be whatever you are, but you are an enemy of the Republic of Kenya, and we will fight with you. Watu ambao wataendelea kucheza na mali ya umma, mali ya wananchi, wajue siku zao zimehesabiwa na ni shida watapata. Tumesema ya kwamba kutoka sasa hatutaki kusikia mtu akitetea wenzake, ati mtu akiiba anasema ni kabila langu, ni dini yangu ambaye inadhulumiwa. Wewe uliiba peke yako, chukua msalaba yako peke yako. Tuungane ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba tumemaliza hiyo vita na wananchi wamepata haki yao. Au ni namna gani wenzangu?
We cannot be a country anymore where those who work hard are robbed of their profit by those who are too lazy to invest and produce. And this is why I am and will continue the fight against corruption to ensure that the fruits of our labor fill every heart with thanksgiving, as indeed stated in our national anthem. I invite all Kenyans to join us, to continue working with us in this most noble effort.
A very good afternoon to you, and glad you could find time to join me for another edition of Kenya Today. Here we get to look at the news making headlines across Kenya, and of course some of these stories we looked at in our morning show, Good Morning Africa show, but we've seen them, new information coming up. So basically they are developing stories, so it's important that we keep you up to date with what is really happening in this country. And so we have a couple of things that I would like to bring to our attention today, or I'd like for us to discuss and talk about. And so we see the update on coronavirus. This has become a very serious and apparent threat in the Kenyan space. When it started in China, we thought it's just over there. I mean, they got it under control and nothing. Perhaps we didn't think it will now become a problem here in Africa, and we've seen a couple of countries recording their first cases and even losing, like in Nigeria. But this was an Italian, so you don't know. By the time it was being discovered that he died from coronavirus, how many people had he come into contact with? Because there are possibilities that he did not even know he had that virus. And also we've seen in Egypt, which became the first African country, and in another African country, I don't know which one, but all the cases, all the scares across the continent, some people were suspected to have contracted the virus, but once they got tested, the results came out negative. So that's a good thing, but still this is an apparent threat. And for Kenyans, this became real when the China Southern airplane was seen to have arrived in the country from China last week with about 239 passengers, if I'm not wrong. Is it 239 or 229? I think 239 passengers from China. all of the world is blocking any flight from that part of the world. So Kenyans are trying to understand what really advised this, this move by the government and the Aviation Authority and the Ministry of Health and Interior to allow this to come in. And if you looked at the headlines over the weekend, they were very interesting. But now, of course, the government has come out and assured Kenyans that the people on that plane were screened before they actually boarded the plane. They were thoroughly screened, and so by the time they were given the green light to take the flight and to come to Kenya, they had gone through proper screening, and so Kenyans have no reason to worry. And we've also seen even the Chinese embassy here in Kenya trying to, calm people down, and they're not very happy by the manner in which Kenyans now they're saying discriminating against the Chinese in this country. We've been having especially some infrastructural development that has really involved the Chinese partnership between Kenya and China. So we've been having Chinese here for a very long time, right? The major highways, the major buildings, you find, the Chinese here building because they do things in record time, Sometimes it's easier for the mega, and then a lot of the projects that are being in partnership with the China government. So they bring us sometimes, engineers and things like that that will hasten and make sure that Kenya gets the best out of such deals. So these are people who have been in this country. Others have not traveled to China lately, but the fact that they're Chinese is just enough for Kenyans to look at them funny and to want to stay away from them. You would understand, of course, a lot of this is ignorance, but also it's scary because the information you get out there is that a person has contracted the disease. You don't know how many people get better, but all you know is people are dying, and wherever there's death, people are not very happy. So as I said there, after that plane, the Southern China plane Airlines embarked in this country last week. Kenyans, oh boy, did not hold back, and they let the government know you cannot be dancing on a grave like this and fluttering with death in this manner and not expect us to talk. And so the health cabinet, this prompted, by the way, President Uhuru Kenyatta to form a committee that really will look into this matter and make sure it's under control. So President did that very fast, and also they're supposed to, I think, build facilities for the next 2 weeks to ensure that should anybody come to this country and they are suspected to have this virus, then these can be kept in isolation at a particular designated place. And so when the proper tests are continuing, or if they're found to be having the virus, they can be receiving the treatment, or if it's not very severe, it can be treated. So Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe Sande said the government will work with county administrations to establish an emergency response center in each devolved unit as part of additional measures to prevent the outbreak of coronavirus in the country. Now, speaking during a press conference at the Harambee House, Kagwe said that the government is ready and continues to enhance its surveillance at all entry points in the country, and not only in Nairobi but also other regions. And he further pointed out 120-bed ward capacity facility, at Mbagathi Hospital in Nairobi to be used as an isolation center for coronavirus, and will be completed by Friday as ordered by President Uhuru Kenyatta. So for those who are worried, Kenyans, I know you've been running with this story. Kenyans, don't joke with Kenyans. Kenyans will bring to your attention, whether you like it or not. And Kenyans on social media, Kenyans don't play. So if it concerns them, that is the time Kenyans will come together. That is the time Kenyans will not remember their tribal alienations, and they'll come together and they'll speak as Kenyans. And so they've been, making fun of apparently the 4 beds that were only set aside at the Kenyatta National Hospital Center, biggest referral hospital. So now we have at 120 bed capacity at Mbagathi Hospital. I think this will go a long way in assuring Kenyans that indeed the government has this matter under control, and also that there's no cause for alarm. But I don't know if that will be enough to convince Kenyans, but I'm sure by President Uhuru Kenyatta coming out a few days ago and assuring the country, and also putting measures in place and constituting this team that would come with mechanisms that will help the country, deal with this unfortunate situation. And then that is a show of leadership. And so with the 120 bed capacity at Mbagathi Hospital, I think that is a good start, because so far all the cases that were thought to be coronavirus were tested and turned out and not to be. So Kenya, so far we've been safe, and those passengers that alighted from that plane from China, the government they were told to go and self-quarantine, and you've seen a few of them doing that. And so there's this taxi driver who might have picked one of the Chinese people from the airport that day, and so he really, I think I came by a video. I didn't watch it fully, and so he was really, really worried, because he's one of the taxi drivers who picked one of the passengers from that flight from China, from the airport. So in his head, I think he thought, I've caught the coronavirus. But as we know, those people who boarded that plane from China were thoroughly screened, and they did not come from the coronavirus hotspot or regions that have been affected severely by this. And so they were thoroughly screened, and so they were. I don't think the government would let a whole plane of sick people who have a potential to make the whole country sick to just come in the country. There had to be some measures put in place. I want to have confidence in that, and believe that there's no way that the government of Kenya would let in people who are not who are dangerous and who are health hazardous to the rest of us into this country. I want to believe that the government of Kenya actually cares more to its people than we give them credit. So anyway, so far, even with the people who arrived in this country, even that plane that arrived in this country a couple of days ago, we've not had any cases, and so they're still self-quarantining themselves, and also the government is keeping an eye on them. And still on that matter, I don't know if you have that update from that. You remember that the security person who I think was taking the video in the airport, and what was happening is, as this plane embarked on the airport, and this young man who was part of the security arrangement there at the airport, I think he was recording a video, and he's saying the reason why he was recording a video is because he saw some Chinese. They were there. There's some Chinese recording. So he thought, because it's a matter of national security and security at our airport, our main airport there. So he was recording so that in case there's anything, he can catch it on his phone. Unfortunately, Kenyans did not see that part. Kenya saw the part that this is a plane from China, Southern China Airlines. I think that was the name of the plane, and it's embarked in Kenya, and yet it's coming from coronavirus hotspot, and so Kenyans wasn't buying any of that, and so this person was interdicted, and so suspended. So the latest is Ali Giri, who is this security man behind the video that went viral on 239 passengers from China, is at Milimani Law Court seeking the revocation of his suspension and state protection. So this man went to court, got a lawyer, went to court, and now he's seeking for state protection and also suspension. I think Mr. Ali, from the news we watch, if you turn to any international media outlet, what you see is just coronavirus. It is such a big deal. Maybe it's us who are not covering it as we should here, but when you watch any news outlet from outside the country, it's coronavirus. It's corona. That is the headlines. People who have died. So I think, he was just shocked. Maybe he didn't realize the magnitude of what he was doing. But I think out of concern, he thought, you know what, now death just arrived. But of course, that also caused a bit of, panic among Kenyans. So maybe it was not the right thing to do, but also he felt he had a duty. And so he shared that video that got him, removed from work for now, not permanently. He was suspended, and now, of course, today he was in court asking for KQ to, revoke his suspension, and also he says his life is in danger, and now he wants a state security. So that is the latest in regards to that coronavirus. So now something else that also has been worrying Kenyans that broke up, and also Kenyans, that visit. Remember that visit that we talked about here during the morning show here in the morning about these members of parliament from northeastern part of the country that visited Somali President Mohamed Farmajo in Somalia, 11 of them using their diplomatic passports without the knowledge of the Kenyan government and without the knowledge of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And they claim they went there to have discussions about Al-Shabaab, which I think that is a matter beyond them. They could be involved at a certain stage because, that part of the country is the hotspot of Al-Shabaab. But that is something that they should be working on in conjunction with, the national government. That is a trip that was very sensitive. That is a trip that is not just the normal trip that you take. They went to see Farmajo. And if you know Somalia and the relationship we have with Kenya right now, it is not as wonderful. So, left a lot to be desired. So right now I'm joined on the phone by Dr. Batanga. He's a bit held up, but we are able to have a few of his some minutes with him here so that we get to look at some of these issues and we get his insight. Doctor, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Punchline Africa Television.
Yes. So I don't know if you've been hearing what I was talking about. And Doctor, there's something that we were discussing yesterday, and I see it's still a developing story as we speak. The visit by the Kenyan members of Parliament, the 11 members of Parliament to Somalia. Yesterday we did not get to really talk about it. So can you tell us your feelings about this?
First of all, I would like to thank all the viewers and listeners, viewers, you wind the world Kenya Today, the affairs program. As we speak now, Somali made Mandela this morning terrorists of Al-Shabaab attacked a town in Mandela. In Mandela town, and the fighting still going on. And about the list of the 11 MPs, they have bigger bone, to do with not the MPs, but have a bigger bone to do with the president for himself. Somalia has become the big point for Al-Shabaab, and the government have one united plan that Kenya does not exist. So we are left in a very precarious position that Kenya is a targeted by both Al-Shabaab and targeted by the government. The Kenya government has supported for a long time. We have fed these guys in Somalia, built them toilets. As we speak right now, they are destroying everything. No relationship Somalia has decided to have no good relationship with President Uhuru Kenyatta. The matter has brought in Ethiopians who equally are ambitious. I don't know why they have become a problem since the current Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy, came to power. He has become ambitious and he has got his flexing muscle on Egypt, on Sudan, and now in Somalia, joining hands with Somali forces to make peace impossible in Somalia. Therefore, it is up to the people of Kenya to make a decision and to know. I have read a lot about this. I've written quite a lot about this. I have been involved in the conflict of the dispute on the Indian oil blocks. The countries that are fueling Somalia to do the things that Somalia is doing are namely Turkey, Qatar, Norway, United Emirates, Egypt, and these countries now in Somalia. As you know, Somalia does not have a central bank. Somalia relies on money from donors, and it is using that money to fight Kenya. So Kenya must take its step seriously and caution some of these countries that are now supporting Somalia, especially Turkey and Qatar, that have a very serious involvement, and Norway. Since this is affecting the security of Kenya, and these countries claim to be friends of Kenya, at the same they are actually supporting Somalia to destabilize Kenya.
So, Doctor, as we speak, what the report that you're receiving right now, or we received in just a few minutes ago, is that Somali National Army invade Kenya Mandera town to arrest a fugitive there, and also Kenya Defense Forces and Somali National Army turned Mandera and Bulahau region into a battleground. 3 deaths and several casualties are reported. Heavy gunfire underway, according to intelligence report. Somali National Defense, aided by Ethiopia, is fighting Jubaland and Kenya combined forces. What is this message that especially Ethiopia is trying to send to Kenya? Because I see that the Ethiopian army has now joined the Somali army, and they're fighting the Jubaland and Kenya forces combined. What is Ethiopia? Because for a long time we thought Ethiopia was a neutral country. We thought Ethiopia was a very friendly country, but in the recent past and some cases when we give an introspect, we've seen not quite friendly, honest relationship that they have with Kenya. So what message is Ethiopia trying to send to the Kenyan government?
I think Ethiopia has been harboring those tons of attacking Kenya or taking an excuse to attack Kenya. Ethiopia has actually taken sides in the Somali conflict since the coming in of the new Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy. It has taken, instead of unified, so it has taken a stand against certain parts of Somalia. Therefore, it has been used by the Somali army that has been recruited, trained by AMISOM, sites inside Somalia. Therefore, the enemies of Kenya seem to be very clear that very soon it will expand to a bigger conflict where both countries, all the countries that are in Somalia, including Somalia itself, have lost the focus of fighting Al-Shabaab instead of fighting each other.
So we saw last week, I think sometimes back last week, or thereabout, the Ethiopian Prime Minister was trying to mediate between Somali and Somaliland. So he had planned a visit between him and Farmajo to visit the Somaliland president, and the Somaliland president refused for their visit. Could this be some of the things, because we know Somaliland is a bit friendly to Kenya, so could this be one of the things that could be advising this new coalition between Ethiopia and Somalia? And what is the interest here that perhaps is the underlying factor and is one of the driving forces?
There is one fact that people must remember. The factor that has always divided Somalia is Somali nationalism. Somali nationalism has always been a very big danger to every forces, all the forces that have gone into Somalia, including AMISOM. The Somalis reach when they become too nationalistic, unite with enemies, come and kill people. It is not going to be long before they take the chorus of nationalism, Somali nationalism, rises against the forces that are within the territory of Somalia. So it's time for the people of East Africa, the people of Kenya, Uganda, and other forces to make sure that the government in Mogadishu is responsible. The biggest problem in Somalia is there are terrorists within Mogadishu, and that's why the areas of Mogadishu and the neighboring counties or regions or provinces, and there is peace in other regions like the one in Jubaland and the Kismayo. There is peace, but what is left is the core government, where the government operates, which is in the Mogadishu area and other areas of Bangalore, which are now full of terrorists and who are now identifying them with the government, because that is what is happening inside Somalia. Therefore, the Somaliland president can't accept the territory is peaceful, and you cannot accept a man from Mogadishu whose territory has got is infested with the terrorists to come and spread the message of goodwill disruption in Somalia. So those are one of the main obstacles of Somalia is somatic of democracy, which is linked with Somali nationalism that can grip that country forever while it starts ticking and it is triggered like the events that are triggering them today.
Mm-hmm. So this visit, this very controversial visit by these members of parliament from the northeastern part of the country, I'm still trying to understand how they've been explaining. They went to talk about Al-Shabaab and all that, and I'm thinking that is not within your mandate. Fine, it is a problem, but if you really wanted to take it up with the Somali government, because they specifically had a meeting with Mr. Farmajo himself, that is something that they would have gone through the government of Kenya, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Ministry of Defense, the president himself, because they appeared there as a state guest. So I don't know. And then today we wake up in the morning and now we're having a fight between the Kenya Defense Forces over there and the Somali Defense Forces who are coming in. And there has been an exchange of what is the relation, and why should Kenyans worry that these members of parliament went there? What could be the story behind this?
First of all, I would like to make my position very clear as regards to the Somali, the visit by the Somali MP, northeastern Kenyan MPs. Whatever was wrong, we thought it was getting into a bus riding to Wajir from Nairobi. That should have happened. That is one. Two, my problem is not with those MPs. My problem is with very much the Hassan Ali, their cronies who are within Kenya, and this with the piracy that we saw on the internet. And therefore, the story is a long story, my dear. I cannot tell you that story today here. It's a long story. There are people within Kenya who have been funding these terrorist activities against Kenyans. The Kenyan government must wake up and get them before they get this country into a divided nation. And that is what I feel. I have done my best to expose. My role is to expose the international Saturday President Fatima has become a thug, an ever-ending thug with no direction for Somalia, who is being used by Qatar and Norway and Turkey but that fed him. That is my position.
Mm-hmm.
That's my position, Miriam.
All right. And also, just before I let you go, Doctor, there's also a matter here that has been a developing story. And today, earlier, detectives raided the home of former Sports Cabinet Secretary Mr. Rashid Chesa in Nairobi over probe on car dealing fraud. Now, the officers were forced to climb on the perimeter wall to gain access into Chesa's current compound after they were barred from driving in. The former CS insisted he could not allow them in because his lawyer was not around at that time. Mr. Chesa, I think the more the police keeps digging, the more they get into a lot of fraudulent things that Mr. Chesa was involved in. Now apparently this car was never, I don't know, it was never paid for, or he got it fraudulently, or something like that. So are we going to see the end of this, or this is just the beginning of more things to unravel in this Chesa case, not forgetting the arms scandal that is still being investigated?
I think the local politics of the current news Kenya today shows to you that things are not the same and they will never be the same. For Chesa, I told you there is no smoke of that nature. There was not like a smoke screen of arms into Kenya. The arms must have been somewhere on the seas. I am very confused that you can't come to a figure of 39.5 without seeing the arms. So I leave it to the authorities that have investigated, but situation needs a direction and the foreign policy needs a direction. We need to work on foreign policy. Somalia is happy with Djibouti is not happy with Kenya. What do we do to bring this normal relationship that African countries deserve to be? That is my question, and I leave it to you, the viewers. Thank you very much for watching Africa television. Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Matanga, thank you so much. It was very nice speaking to you. That was Dr. Matanga there talking to us via a phone link. He's not in studio today, but I needed to get his thoughts about some matters that are important and the current situation here in the country. So the latest, I'll just recap that story. And Somali National Army invade Kenya Mandera town to arrest a fugitive Janan. Kenya Defense Forces and Somali National Army turned Mandera and Bulahau region into a battleground. 3 deaths and several casualties reported. Heavy gunfire underway, according to intelligence report. Somali National Defense, aided by Ethiopia, is fighting Jubaland and Kenya combined forces. And more updates will be coming soon in case I receive as we continue with this show and as I continue to receive them. So that is the breaking news that we received a couple of minutes ago, just before I came on set. And so now On to another story. Remember, the show is called Kenya Today, so we get to look at the developing stories and the latest in terms of, because they're stories we've been following. They're developing stories, so we've been following and trying to see the end of them. So we just bring you up to date on the latest and what is really happening. So today, as you know, the governor of Nairobi was facing impeachment process that had already been started by a member of county assembly there in the Nairobi Assembly, and sometimes back last week, that meeting at State House that saw Sonko relinquish some of very key, sectors in this county to the national government. Kenyans were shocked, and so the latest is, and then President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think, met with the MCAs a few days ago, and I think he was trying to convince them not to impeach the governor. And the reason, from what I was reading in yesterday's paper, was the president was trying to explain to them that should we impeach this person, we do not have a deputy governor, so that means Nairobi will be at a crisis, and now we'll start to grapple with other problems that were not foreseen. And so that is what was on the paper. So apparently today, the High Court has issued a temporary relief for Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko after it ordered Nairobi members of County Assembly not to proceed with an impeachment motion against him. According to Justice Bairam Ongaya, the proposed motion by MCAs on impeachment, scheduled for Tuesday, shall not proceed due to compliance of the Standing Order number 67 is complied with. Until the Standing Order number 65 is complied with. Now, on Tuesday, March 3rd, that is tomorrow, the motion filed by Makongeni member of County Assembly, Peter Imwatok, was scheduled to be debated. And Imwatok had accused Sonko of abuse of office, a violation of the Constitution, irregular procurement of tenders, among others. According to Imwatok, the county has seen irregular withdrawal of 200 million Kenya shillings in cash, as well as the misuse of public resources by the governor to settle political scores. And I was just reading yesterday's paper here, and the amount of money I hear Sonko could spend on people who could come and give him stories. The politicians. They are planning to impeach you, but you see, the only way you can escape this, give me this amount of money. So apparently he used so much trying to save his head there from the impeachment, especially after his counterpart in Kiambu, Mr. Ferdinand Waititu, was impeached. I think he realized his goose was already cooked, and should the MCAs really continue with this, he had a chance of perhaps not being impeached in the county assembly, but also definitely if he got to the Senate, then that will be an impeachment. And so last week, I went to State House, agreed with the president. They signed the understanding that some of, services or some of the dockets here in Nairobi County shall be reverted to the national government. Very important dockets there, I might add, that is transport and others, about 4 or 5 of them that now have gone back to the national government. Kenyans did not even understand what was that. Is it even legal? And it has a matter of its legality and all that have come into play. But the employment and the labor relations, as I said there, has suspended the impending impeachment of Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko. So Sonko, through his lawyer Harrison Kinyanjui, told Justice Bairam Ongaya members of the county assembly had failed to supply him with annexures supporting the motion. This is just legalese, and annexures supporting the motion as a jargon. It's a legal jargon, supporting the motion for impeachment, hence his inability to formally respond as directed by Speaker Beatrice Elachi. He pointed out that Section 67 and 72 of the County Assembly Act had not been complied with by petitioners seeking to impeach the governor. He said the motion ought to have been approved by the County Assembly Clerk, Jacob Ngwele, and not Monica Mugami, Kimani, who is said to be the assembly clerk. And so these are some of the things the judge cited as to why this impeachment process should not go on tomorrow. And so the judge directed parties to file their responses by March 4th. I think they should do that tomorrow because March 4th is Wednesday. Now, the embattled county chief was given until Tuesday to defend himself against accusations leveled against him in the impeachment tabled by Makongeni Ward Representative Mr. Imotok. And, the grounds of impeachment outlined in the motion include a gross violation of the Constitution, Public Finance Act 2012, inability to control and manage public debt and clear spending expenses, exhibiting incompetence and inability to offer leadership and willingly failing to name a deputy governor with an ulterior motive of holding the country at a ransom. Now, the impending debate on the impeachment came at a time the governor signed to surrender some of the key dockets here in Nairobi to the national government. All right. So there we go. I don't know if and another story, I think I forgot to ask a doctor about this, I think, because this is also a story that we've been following, and they wrote at the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the government must do something about the NHIF. This is becoming out of hand because a lot of poor Kenyans who cannot afford proper or corporate, medical covers, this is all they have. So when you hear cases like this coming from this very important thing to Kenyans, then government must pay serious attention, even if it means just overhauling the whole management of NHIF and taking them to jail one by one, those who are found to have stolen or misappropriated funds there. That is what should be happening. Health is something very important to you, Mr. President, that you had to put it as one of your big four agendas that you want to realize. You want to remain as your legacy, President Uhuru Kenyatta. And now, NHIF is a very important supporting factor to the universal healthcare. And the kind of chaos we get from those offices or that office, I think that you need to send some investigators there. I think heads need to start rolling, and the Minister of Health, Mr. Mutahi Kagwe, the new Minister of Health. Honestly, I'm happy. Perhaps now we'll see change in the Ministry of Health, because I thought, the other lady we had there before, Mutahi, I don't know if she was up to. I mean, there were a lot of challenges that engulfed that ministry when she was there, and so I'm not sure. I can't rate her performance there, but the current, CS for Health seems to have a grasp of what he's talking about, and he seems to have a better understanding about that ministry. So now the rot at the National Hospital Insurance Fund is not about to end anytime soon, as documents tabled in Parliament paint a picture of a government institution that is on its deathbed. All right. It is afternoon. I just had my lunch a few minutes ago, so parts of the brain you experience some Anyway, there has been exposed corruption, a bungled recruitment of members, mismanagement of contributors' monies, inflated procurement costs that are saddled with irregularities, and stints in counterproductive commercial insurance schemes sum up the mess at NHIF. Mr. President, this cannot be allowed to continue to happen. National Hospital Insurance Fund is a big deal to the people who actually use it. I've never had a chance to use my card, but I have it and I make my contribution. That is because I'm never sick much often. That requires me to go to a hospital, but it serves a huge number of Kenyans who otherwise could not access medical services. So NHIF is very, very important, and it is one of the key things that could support President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda of realizing universal healthcare. So now then, with an effort of trying to encourage everybody to be accessing, or if a Kenyan Kenyan somewhere who's not able, like I said, to afford the corporate health cover, but they have NHIF, they're sure to go to a hospital and see a professional and get some medication, even if the medicine sometimes is not available in the public hospitals. But you're also given a prescription you can go out and buy or something like that. So Kenyans who truly need this service actually do need this service, and that's why they sacrifice and make their contribution. The civil servants, other Kenyans from informal sectors, they've taken this very seriously. Because $5 a month, and for some people $5 a month is a lot of money. And then you hear about inflated procurement cost, the irregularities that goes there, the mismanagement of the monies that these members are contributing, the counterproductive commercial insurance schemes. It's just a mess, Mr. President Uhuru Kenyatta. It is time that this NHIF, a milking cow for a few individuals in this country, the management should be disbanded completely and everything brought under overhaul. And then we need some proper audit in that farm, and anybody found culpable of any form of economic, criminal activity that happened there, they should be held liable. And that is how you teach a lesson, and that is how they'll find that corruption. That is how you make corruption a very expensive affair. So, because from last year, what did we see? Somebody who's just a mere clerk in that office. What we learned later ended up they own like about 8 townhouses. They leave their office to their homes in a chopper, because why should they sit on traffic, and yet they can afford to get a chopper? And this is the money that the people have contributed, the poor people, somebody who has worked tirelessly, sweated. Saving that $5 is such a big deal to some families, because Kenya, a lot of families live lower than $1 a day, unfortunately. All right. So when you rob people like this, it's very unfortunate. So I think that NHIF as a whole needs a total overhaul, so that we bring proper people there who actually are able to serve Kenyans as they should. And Mr. President, the people, when you bring proper people in an institution like the National Hospital Insurance Fund, then perhaps you'll be able to realize a successful, universal healthcare, because NHIF really, I think, works in tandem with that, because universal healthcare, the people who really are suffering and who are not able to access proper medical attention are the people in the lower tier of this whole thing. So until that is taken care of, the rest of the top and the other in the middle, they're able to afford. They work. They're able to afford the corporate health insurance. They're able to afford to go to a health institution. But these ones, they need it. So as a government, and in line with one of your big 4 agendas, we have to protect, we have to make sure that Kenyans, they're able to access these services. And the people who are there messing up these monies that are being contributed, the law needs to catch up with them, and very, very quickly. Now, also in another news from Kenya, former Kilifi County government official has been arrested by detectives from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission over alleged involvement in an irregular tender award and illegal acquisition of public property. Dr. Timothy Malingi, a former chief officer, Department of Health Services, was arrested alongside the directors of Skywards Agency Limited, Colonel Otieno Mak, and his wife, Jacqueline Atieno Olewe. Now, the ESCC said in a statement on Monday that they will face charges of irregular award over the construction of dispensary block and a pit latrine at Vishakani in Kaloleni Ward and illegal acquisition of public property. I have no qualms with that. ESCC, do your job. You find them culpable, have them take responsibility. And what else? Oh, all right. I didn't finish the coronavirus thing. So the latest is the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, today said it was stocking up masks, beds and thermometers as part of preparedness measures for the coronavirus, an epidemic that the World Health Organization has declared a global health emergency. Now, KEMSA Chief Executive Officer Jonah Manjari said although there are enough masks in the country, the agency has started the process of procuring 1 million more for contingency purposes. He further said that the agency was finalizing the process of equipping the Mbagathi Hospital in Nairobi to act as a quarantine center for any suspected coronavirus. So I see there the Ministry of Health and the Kenyan government has really gotten into this corona matter. So Kenyans now, you need to rest assured that everything is under control. And that plane that came from China last week, we've not had any infections. We've not had any scary stories. So I'm assuming we're still safe. Can we just continue staying safe? Protect our borders, please. The government, protect our borders, and anybody coming to Kenya, they have to be safe for them to be allowed into our country. So far, I think Kenyans, you have no reason to worry. The coronavirus the government seems to have everything under control, and proper measures have been put in place just in case, everything will be taken care of. So thank you so much. This has been Kenya Today, where we've been looking at some of the news making headlines across Kenya, but also developing stories that we've been following. Like in the morning, we talked about the members of parliament who visited Somalia, and we also talked about the coronavirus, and we also talked about other matters here in Kenya, and we keep seeing these stories developing, so I had to bring you up to date. So thank you so much. I'll see you here tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa, and then later on, after that, Diaspora Dispatches, where we shall look at other news-making stories across Africa as we normally do. But for now, thank you so much. My name is Miriam Gutu. Good afternoon.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.